he needs to be playing week in, week out at blindside flanker, and then we've got a blindside flanker who's big enough to compete and provide more possession for those two locks.
Could you see at 17 the potential in that young man?
Without doubt, no, you can definitely see it at 17. You can probably see it at about 12. I'd start Beauden Barrett at 10. That's where he's been most successful. You look at the win-loss ratio with the All Black team under Barrett and compare it to anybody else in recent times, and it's quite startling.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Always a pleasure to have the old warrior himself, Murray Mexted. Played more than 70 games for our country, represented us so proudly. Mex, we've gone over the last couple of weeks and we've talked about various positions and your thoughts on who Scott Robertson might be looking at. Today, a couple of different ones to tackle. 4 and 5, numbers on the back, and also number 10. So let's start in the forward pack where you belong. And you've talked about height, and you've raised a great discussion point. We get a lot of comments about this, about the need, especially against the Springboks, to look at the aerial possession, winning those kickoffs, winning lineouts, getting that first phase, especially in the air. And we've had a lot of suggestions about, okay, well, if that's the case, where do we go for height, power in the middle row? Does Scott Barrett move back to number 6, which would give us extra height advantage? Satiti at 8, maybe Ardie at 7. You've discussed all of that. So let's go for our two locks then, straight away. Who are they in your mind, or who would you like to see?
Well, I think that Scott Barrett is the best lock we've got in this country. He's world class, and he's 2 metres tall. So the other lock really has to be over 2 metres, maybe 2.4 or something like that, because if you look at Whitelock and Retallick, they were 2.02 and 2.04.
Yeah, big tall ones, yeah.
You know, pretty big men. And we can't play with smaller locks. We've got to play with locks as big as them or bigger. So, and Scott Barrett's a little bit short of Whitelock, for example, but he's a world-class player, a fabulous player in my mind. So he secures one position of lock. You don't go moving him to blindside flanker where he hasn't played as much rugby if you haven't got 5 or 6 guys saying, I'm your lock forward.
Right.
So I'd play him at lock where he belongs, and then I would make a choice. And this might surprise you, but I've just been looking at the size of the players around the country. And, you know, we've got the Springboks here in New Zealand. So we've got to have a guy that can compete in aerial position, and he's got to be the best we've got in the country. So at the moment, I reckon it's probably Lord, in my view. But the other guy that I've made a note of is this guy, Holland.
Yep, Fabian Holland. Yep.
Yeah, now, he's a big man. They're both very big men. And in the old language, you know, they're both about 6'8" or something like that. So, you know, that's my view. The guy, Vaa'i,
Tupou Vaa'i,
is playing so well.
Well, he was brilliant last year for us, wasn't he?
And he's so hungry. It's just that he's not much taller than me. You know, he's only 195 or 196, I think he is. So you can't put a 196 guy against a 2 metres 06 guy. It just, you know, you just can't expect him to. He might win most of his own ball. He'll probably lose 1, maybe 2, but he's not going to win any opposition ball. And at the end of the day, it's how much possession do you have? And if you don't have more than 50% against the Springboks, you're not going to beat them because they play a percentage game.
Having said that, though,
game in many
I'll
respects.
argue against you in that I thought he came of age against the Boks in South Africa last year. I had big doubts about him because he was one of those guys who played 20 or so, 30 tests for the All Blacks and hadn't really got to that level. And then last year he came on really strong and played almost bigger than he is, if you know what I mean.
Okay, so let's put him in the team at blindside flanker.
Okay. That's Maverick.
That's my view.
That's Maverick.
I know we tried him there once and he looked a bit lost. Well, you can't blame a guy being moved from lock to blindside flanker and looking a bit lost in his first year. You know, he needs to be playing week in, week out at blindside flanker, and then we've got a blindside flanker who's big enough to compete and provide more possession for those two locks. So my view is move him to blindside.
Okay, and would that be still Satiti at 8 and Ardie at 7, or Ardie at 8 and you're looking at another 7?
Well, what I would do is I want to have players who can win the ball, and I want to have open side flankers that their game is attacking the ball. And I've said many occasions on your program, Marty, that number 7 and number 8 are very similar positions these days because they need to put pressure on the ball. They need to recover ball. Yeah. So they need to retain ball when we've got it and regain it when the opposition have got it. The 7 and 8 have got to work together. As it happened, there's no difference way back into my day when Graham Murray sort of revolutionised the game and said, move the number 8 forward with the number 7 so the number 7's got some support. There's nothing, and that's the same today. You've got to have 2 guys at the breakdown. You really do.
Yep.
If you can get 2 guys first, you're going to win that recovery ball, which is the most important ball on the field. So I'd play the 2 best guys that we've got in the country at open side flanker. Who are the best open side flankers in the country? And, you know, you've got to look. There's a few. The Hurricanes have got one.
Yep, he's good. He's been playing bloody well, Karifi, yep.
Karifi's been playing very well. But Blackadder's, you know, the Crusaders have got one too. His name's Blackadder.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a bit of a height advantage because he's about 6'3", 1 metre 90 something. So that's handy. I want to see some size in the loose forwards. Bearing in mind that open side flank is all about recovery of possession and turning over possession, and Karifi is very strong in that area.
Yeah.
So to me, I'd be playing Ardie Savea at number 8.
Okay.
So I'd play Ardie Savea. He's our best player. He's been playing number 8 for years. Played more number 8 than he has number 7,
sure.
actually.
Yep.
We moved him to 7 when we were.
You did say that at IRANZ, yeah. Didn't you put him at 7 or did you put him at 8 at IRANZ?
No, he came to us as an 8.
And you put him at 7, that's right. Yeah.
We assessed him as not being, and he was only young then, remember, he was only 17.
Oh, okay.
And we looked at genealogy and looked at what height he was likely to get to because his mother was quite short. And we said that if the furthest you can go, you'll go as a 7 because genuinely he's not quite tall enough to be an aerial possession winner at 8.
But he's such an all-round player, isn't he?
So he's not. He's a winner of the ball on the ground. He's fantastic at that, and Karifi's probably second best in the country after Ardie. But Blackadder's also a punter in that area. He's got a bit more height, and he's got a hell of a work rate.
Yep.
And he's committed. And I'd play him and I'd play Ardie at 8 because Ardie's sort of the man, isn't he?
Mex, when you get a young kid, and they are young kids at 17. I mean, we look at our own kids and we know that at 17 they're still kids. They think they're adults, but they're actually... I mean, at 17, what do you see in a player? Could you see how good he was going to be? Physically, he's obviously changed. He's got a lot bigger and so forth. But could you see at 17 the potential in that young man?
Oh, without doubt. Without doubt. No, you can definitely see it at 17, Marty. You can see it. You can probably see it at about 12.
Okay.
Or 13, 13 probably rather than 12. So one of the issues is maturity. When the young men mature, and if you're Polynesian, you mature a little quicker physically than a Caucasian does.
Yep.
So at about 13 years of age, the Polynesian goes ahead, and the Caucasian doesn't get to that same level of physical maturity till he's about 18 or 19. So a lot of these Caucasian boys get knocked around between 13 and 18, and the Polynesian boys get very quick development, and then all of a sudden they stop, and the rest catch up.
Bit, yeah.
And incidentally, the Māori's about halfway between. He's sort of halfway between the Pacific Islander and I'm talking about physical development. I'm not talking about mental development.
No, I understand, mate. Yeah. Yeah, just in
Physical
case anyone gets it
yeah.
wrong. Yeah, I see. You're just looking at what you're looking at. All right. Let's look at number 10 then. I want to close on this because if you were Scott Robertson...
Well, hang on just a moment.
Okay.
I just want to add on what you said there. The attributes you're looking for in each position are different. Now, for an open side flanker number 8, the most important attribute is anticipation.
Okay.
Anticipation and vision of seeing what is happening before it actually happens.
Isn't that instinct? Can you call that instinct?
And they're all good at that. No, I think that you've either got you either got anticipation or you haven't, and it doesn't matter. For example, number 6s don't require the same amount of anticipation as number 7 because they're going to get to the action later than than the number 7 because they're on the blind side normally and they're lifting in the line out normally. So, they don't necessarily need that attribute. But if you're exceptional like Graham Murray and Richie McCaw were, absolutely exceptional anticipation, and Sam Cane too.
Yeah, I agree.
Very good anticipation. Then you play the guy with the most anticipation because that split second's going to get you the ball quicker.
Can you teach that though? Is that something that you looked at IRANZ? Like, if you can see it in somebody, but is it again something that you can teach?
You can teach it, yeah, definitely. In fact, I think that Sam Cane is probably
good example. Yeah,
over the years in anticipation.
Okay.
But some people have just got better anticipation. It's as simple as that. Just like some people have more speed.
Sure.
And you can always build your speed and you can always build your anticipation. But if you've got it naturally and it's really outstanding vision or anticipation, and when I look at Graham Murray, he definitely had outstanding vision and anticipation. And when you look at your best open side flanker since those days of Murray, you'd have to say it's McCaw, and McCaw mirrored Murray in my book, but nobody will remember Goss because he and I are too old. But everyone remembers McCaw.
Yeah, I'd also argue for Michael Jones in there. He was just so physically, well, I don't know, he just elevated, didn't he? I mean, he brought so many different things to that position too, just that natural athleticism and speed that he had as well.
Yes, he did. And in fact, it's a great example, Marty, because Ardie Savea is a rather similar player in many respects.
There you go.
You know, they run differently, but they both are elusive and strong runners. Michael Jones was outstanding, wasn't he? I mean, you could just about play Michael Jones as a centre. He was the sort of guy that you could move into different positions, and he could be a master of more positions than one. Whereas most people have a position as their best position, and that's the key thing. And I've always thought that Blackadder was playing out of position. I always thought he wasn't a 6 and he wasn't an 8. He was an open side flanker. And finally, at long last, they're playing him at open side flanker. I guess you got to thank Rob Penny for that, because they've been moving him around for years and years, but he's now at number 7, and that's where I think he belongs.
I like Rob Penny. I like him as a person. I like the fact he's doing a good job, even though that Canterbury side and Crusaders side never been my favourites, but I like that guy. He's actually a good man, Rob.
Yeah, I don't know him. He's been overseas coaching for many years, of course, and he's now back, so I can't comment there, but I do know Ardie Savea he's one of the few players that has the ability to play in 2 positions.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's go to 10 then.
And he's a bit like Michael Jones in that regard.
Let's go to 10 then. So if you were Scott Robertson and you were looking just at the weekend, and Damian McKenzie, everyone has one of these games, man. He had a shocker against New South Wales. The Chiefs didn't play well at all. Beauden Barrett has come back from that broken hand and just showing again glimpses of his skills, the chip and chase, the speed that he's got. You talk about anticipation and a rugby brain, that guy's got it. In terms of goal kicking, probably McKenzie's got the edge on that. But if you were picking right now to start the All Blacks season, who's your 10?
Barrett's my 10. Barrett's my 10 because he's a specialist 10. He's also got the ability to play 15. I think McKenzie is a specialist 15 who has the ability to play 10.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different there, you know. I think McKenzie's got an X factor that not many players have got. It's an X factor that's too good not to have in your squad. So I'd have him in my squad, but I'd start Beauden Barrett at 10. That's where he's been most successful. You look at the win-loss ratio with the All Black team under Barrett and compare it to anybody else in recent times, and it's quite startling.
This is the DSPN.